Welcome back to Call Me By Your Game, the podcast where I, your host, Connor McCabe, bring on a guest to hear from them about a meaningful or memorable video game from a particular moment in their life. On the show, I get into what made playing the game special and what is memorable to our guest, as much as I will get into the details of how and when the game has a meaningful context and when in their life that it made its appearance. A little bit of housekeeping up top is that anything that my guest or I plug on this episode, if you scroll down in the show notes, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcast catcher like Apple or Spotify, if you scroll down, you'll find links galore. So whether you want to check out our Patreon at Super NPC Radio, where we have bonus video game podcasts that come out every single week at different tiers, and some stuff even for the free members there, like an invite to our Discord, or if you want to see something that our guest has plugged today, I don't know what it could be, it's going to be in the show notes, because I know future me has done that work and has put it in there. That'll do it for the housekeeping, and I'll finally introduce my guest for today's episode. So please welcome to the microphone, writer, weightlifter, and Lost Vikings apologist, Fernanda Perez.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Connor. Thank you for having me today.
You are so welcome. Welcome back. I mean, you're a returning champion. You join a short list, Fernanda, of people who have come back for a second episode. How do you feel with this esteemed honor?
Wow, amazing. Usually when I go places, they don't ask me back. It's great to be back.
That can't possibly be true. I know you well enough to know that you're a great hang and a fun person to be around, but I'll take your word for it. Fernanda, you first appeared on this podcast way back in 2020 on episode 26, where we discussed The Lost Vikings, a game from Blizzard, an episode I remember very well and remember having so much fun researching the game, looking up things that I didn't know about it, and also hearing from you. It feels kind of nuts that it's been that long too, almost a full 5 years. I don't know how time has passed so quickly, I guess is where I was going with that.
It does feel very quickly. Just yesterday I read someone said, why did time go faster once you're 18? And I thought, yeah, that is true. It's just really fast, and it's incredible you've done in that time more than 200 episodes. Right?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's been an absolute blast. So thank you. I'm glad we can turn the shine the light back at me. I'm always happy to do that. Yes, and I want to really quick. This is such a tangent, but I want to dive into that thing about why time feels like it moves faster when you turn 18. My guess is that there's two possible reasons. And well, do you have any hypotheses before I present mine?
I think so. I was thinking about it. And I thought, when you are a kid, basically, if you have a nice enough family, your basic needs are taken care of. You're just have to go to school, basically, and do okay at school. I know that's not the same for every person in the world, but once you become an adult, it's now you're in charge of everything, and you don't, I guess, the time you rest is less. And so things go by faster.
Yes, that was basically the exact same thing I was going to say for my first reason. And it makes so much sense. Yeah, we're spending so much more time as adults. And I can relate to the scenario you laid out, too. That was very much how my life was growing up. I was very, very fortunate and spoiled. And yeah, we spent a lot less time relaxing and leisure and doing whatever we want because we're either working a job or we're trying to find a job, that sort of thing, or just like taking care of our pets, making sure our homes are nice, so that makes sense, and I wouldn't have thought about it unless you brought it up today. The other thing, and I don't remember when I heard this or who I heard it from, but it was more of a math thing where when let's say you're 8 years old and 1 year of your life, 12 months, each month feels like is such a bigger fraction of your life at that time than when you're even 16. It's, I guess, half as much as that.
True. That's
so
true.
Now I'm 34. When a month passes, it's like the blink of an eye. When I was 8, it probably felt like now what like half a year feels like or something like that.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I'm sure the math doesn't exactly work out, but it's just a smaller piece of the pie of our life. So every so often I'll think about that and just be horrified that the last time we recorded, I was 29 years old.
Oh my God.
Turned
That's
30
crazy.
that year. Not a fun year to turn 30, by the way, during the pandemic. Yes. I'm a social person. I like to throw big parties. You've come to parties that I've had multiple times. So yeah, more low key that year was not as fun. But anyway, I've got us way off on a tangent. I'll bring us back. It's so great to have you back. I know you as a wonderful writer, friend, and person, a comedian through the UCB Theater. It's just how we've, come to know each other. And also, now we've known each other for significantly longer than we did when we actually recorded that first episode, which is bonkers.
It's crazy.
But while you're here today, what do you want to share with the listener about yourself? What should the people know about you? And is there anything you feel like plugging?
I'm not as involved as I was before with improv and comedy. I still do UCB has a show called Feliz Hour, which is all Latino improvisers getting together once a month. That's a fun show.
And that's Menudo who puts that on?
Yes.
Menudo
puts that on.
Speaking of my arch nemesis, July Diaz, who I do a million podcasts with.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he was wearing at one time at a show a bling necklace of tails.
That is July for you.
Yes. I kind of wanted one. And I'm writing stuff on my own, but I don't want to plug it yet as it's not finished.
Sure.
The other thing I'd like to plug, hopefully it will be finished this year, is my husband Sandy's game, Mina the Hollower.
Yes.
She's here. That's the one thing, please finish this year. I've been waiting.
Yes. I know several people who would be so thrilled. They'll be thrilled to play it whenever it's done. But if it happened this year, it'd be extra exciting for them. There's a friend of mine who you maybe have met before, my friend Patrick Ellers, who you've probably met at one of our video game hangs. He is an enormous Yacht Club and Shovel Knight fan, and he's actually one of the people I'm going with to the same Shovel Knight concert that you're going to.
Oh, I think you introduced me
yes.
At the birthday party.
Yes, I thought I may have done that, but
yes.
In fact, this is a quick way for me to both talk about myself and also plug our Patreon again. But every year, I talked to you about this, but every year I do a co-op series, which is basically a bonus episode every month on our Patreon, where it's a version of this show where instead of talking to someone one-on-one like we're doing, I'll get at least two other people on to discuss a game that we've all recently played or revisited. And last year, I covered great sequels in games. And then this year, we're doing all indie games. And the game we were going to cover for the first episode in January was Shovel Knight Shovel of Hope. But once the concert got postponed, I moved the schedule around. So we're doing that in April, because I think we're going in late March is the concert now.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Yes. I will be there as well.
Yes, so something like that. But yeah, that's so nice of you to plug that game, though. I'm sure many listeners of this show are eager to play it, especially if they've played Shovel Knight, Treasure Trove, or anything like that.
Yeah. I've seen Sandy working every day. I've seen all the things that are in it. I just don't know where they go.
Yes, because he's the lead art designer of the game.
He's the lead artist for this game, so he's doing all the pixel art.
Okay, great.
All the most, not all, because Was, the artist for Shovel Knight, also works in it. But Sandy's doing most of the enemies, characters, tiles, houses. Yesterday he was making a house.
Oh man. That's so exciting. I can't wait to play it. It's from all that I've gathered about the game, of things I've seen externally, not talking to you or having any inside info, it seems to be a sort of action adventure top-down Zelda-like, which is basically my favorite genre of game. So I'm so excited to play it, but also for Sandy and the team over there.
Yeah,
it's really exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited to play it. Once it's done, I'll see what it's like.
Hey, someday. Fernanda, have you gotten to share all that you wanted to about yourself with the listener? Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, Before we talk about your recent history with video games and do a little catching up, will you please introduce what you've brought on for the main event later and call me by your game?
Yes, I have brought today Metal Slug X.
I can't wait. I'm so excited. Game from 1999. Well, actually, yeah, let me I shouldn't have said that.
I think you're right, but I played the PlayStation 1 version.
Yes.
Which I read came out 2001, but it is the same thing.
Thank you. Yes, no, exactly. Well, as soon as I said that, I was like, wait, I know part of that information's correct. So, yeah, I can't wait to talk about this. It's a game I'm not familiar. Well, I know about, but I've never played. And having researched it, I want to play it today. So I can't wait to get into that.
It's very short. You could do it in less than 2 hours.
Yes. Well, we're also doing... Oh, I'll talk about that later. But I'm excited to hear... I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm so pumped to hear about that game from you on the main event after the break. But let's catch up with your more recent history with video games, basically since you've been on the show last. Now, I know we're probably not going to get every detail right, but... My first question, the way I want to start off with, is, Fernanda, if you are going to play a video game, like at home, what is the primary way that you play? Do you play on the computer, Nintendo Switch? Are you, or is it a variety of consoles?
I would mainly play, depends. For most things, I would mainly play on the PS5. And then sometimes I play Fall Guys with my cousins, or what's that game where people are wearing a hazard suit, a hazmat suit?
It's
one
not...
of us, Among Us.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
If I play those, it's on the laptop. Otherwise, the PS5.
Okay, gotcha. Awesome. Well, so that I just was kind of... It's a new question that I'm asking returning guests, because I know for some of us, the modes in which we game can change even from like year to year.
Yeah.
That being the case, have you noticed since you've last come on, how have your gaming habits changed? Are you playing more? Is there a genre you've grown attached to? I'll just ask you that.
So the last time I talked to you, I think the pandemic was just beginning.
Yes.
And so during the pandemic, I played a lot of games.
Nice.
I kind of had stopped before that. It wasn't as much. Sandy, my husband, made the mistake, and I say mistake because for both of us, it took too much of my life to say. He said, you shouldn't play Bloodborne because it's too hard for you.
Oh.
And to me, that's like, now I have to play it. Why did you say that? Why did you? You didn't need to bring this challenge.
That's like when kids will say, hey, you won't do this, or you won't, whatever it is. Yeah.
That's how our marriage works. No, I'm kidding. But anyway, he said it, and so I was like, now I have to play it. My dignity's on the line. So I started playing it during the pandemic, and it was really, really fun. But he was right. It was too hard for me. But my brother... Brian, he is obsessed with From Software games. Okay. Obsessed. He has played them a million times, and he's the best gamer I know. Like, he's so good at games. So I recruited his help. He logged into his PS4 back then in Miami and joined my I don't know what to call it. My session.
Game, I guess. Yeah,
my game. And then one of Sandy's friends in Chicago also joined my session, so the three of us would finish the game together.
Oh my! Amazing! I know that I am not a FromSoft player. They are too hard for me, although I still have like a morbid curiosity. But I know that that's something that many people enjoy about them, is the co-op ability to play with other people and jump in and help each other. Yeah,
it was great. At one point, I used to stream it as well on Twitch, and this 13-year-old started watching my streams. At one point, he joined.
No way.
Yes, and at one point, I remember one day, my brother couldn't make it, Sandy's friend couldn't make it. It was just me and a 13-year-old.
Oh my gosh.
Who was actually really good. And he would be like, why are you so slow? Why are you so slow? But yeah, I guess in the four of us together joined our forces and finished the game. It was such a fun game. I sometimes here and there, I try to play it again by myself to see how far I can go.
That's amazing, though. That's one that I know. I know several people who are like, that is my favorite game that company has made is Bloodborne. It's still exclusive to the PlayStation 4. They've never released another version. There's no PC, no PS5 upgrade. It's one that people are always clamoring for. Like when they ever have those presentations, whether it's a PlayStation State of Play or an Xbox thing. People are like, Bloodborne remake, come on.
I would love that.
Yeah. Well, doing that, did that lead you to try any more or play any more FromSoft games in groups, or was that just your one experience?
I think From Software, that's the only one because I think I'm not sure about the Dark Souls one.
Sure.
I think it's open world. And I definitely Elden Ring, the latest one, is definitely open world. I cannot do open world games too much.
Yeah.
And for people that don't know, it's a game where there is no one path you follow. It's just open.
Yeah.
You can go wherever. That's nice, but I cannot do it because I have a lot of anxiety. I just want one path. And if it's open, it's too many options for me.
Yeah. That can be overwhelming. I feel that way in games a lot of the time. So it's very relatable.
Yeah.
Well, maybe someday you're going to have to update us if you do dive into a different FromSoft, and if you get that itch to scratch.
Yeah. I am getting the itch to play Elden Ring because I watched Sandy play, and sometimes there's no rhyme or reason why something you do works. I know that's the gripe people have. Like, how would I guess? I have to use this pot. There's no clues. But I guessed a couple of those things. I don't know why. I just was like, try that. And so it made me think like, oh, maybe I could do it.
Sure. Yeah. It almost the inverse of like feeling paralyzed by the infinite routes you could go. The inverse of that is kind of like if you can get in the right headspace, it's almost freeing to just be like, well, I don't know what I'm doing, and who knows what the solution is. I'll go for it.
Yeah.
So I guess it depends on the mood you're going to be in that day.
Yes.
That's fantastic, though. For me, the only FromSoft game I ever tried was Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. Do you know that one?
I know it's Sandy's favorite game.
I've told this story before. I must have given this game 2 hours, and I had like gotten it for Christmas on like a discount. I never went back to it. I was like, this is so punishing and so hard.
Wow.
I wonder if today I would respond differently to it, because this was like 6 years ago that I tried it, or whenever the game came out. Anyway, FromSoft, have there been any other impactful gaming experiences in the last like 5 years or so for you?
Let me try to remember. So while I was playing Bloodborne, of course, it's the pandemic. During then, I also played a lot of Fortnite. A lot during the pandemic.
Yeah.
I stopped since then, but it was really fun. And
that's cool.
I also played Among Us. I think those were the only. My bad. And I played Fall Guys a lot as well.
Yes. Sounds like a lot of like social gaming. Is that
Yes.
where those games all fell into a category for?
Yeah, the Fall Guys and Among Us, definitely. Bloodborne, sometimes social, sometimes not. And I really liked Fall Guys, and I kind of became a troll. So there are people that... Fall Guys, you go through like a obstacle course.
Yes.
And then there's a finish line at the end. There are people that they wait at the finish line and they try to stop other people. I became one of these people.
You were a part of the problem.
Yeah, I was like, let's see how many kids I can stop.
Gosh, that is so funny. In 2020, when that game came out, I played so much of that, mostly with friends. Like, we'd hop on, I wish we would have played together. We would hop on Zoom and just, especially because we weren't doing much socializing outside of that, we'd hop on for an hour and a half, kind of get socially exhausted and hop off. But that game, just the sheer nature of like thinking that you having control most of the time, but then also it feels like, I heard someone describe it as controlling a drunk toddler as your character. Just something about that made it so fun to me to play. So it's been a while since I've been back to it, though. Have you played it recently?
Not too recently, no. I liked it a lot because it reminded me of the. Do you remember this TV show called Most Extreme Elimination or something like that?
I don't.
I think it was a Japanese show that they dubbed.
Okay.
Maybe it was on Spike TV. I don't remember. But it was humans doing giant obstacle courses. And that is kind of what Fall Guys felt like for me.
Yes. Okay. I see that similarities. Yeah. So obvious. That's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, what a fun group game. Well, recently, has there been anything in the last maybe couple years since like the deepest part of the pandemic that you've played that comes to mind?
Just Bloodborne again, trying to play by myself and seeing how far I went. I always get to the first boss and I cannot beat the clerical beast. Yeah. Gotcha.
Okay, well, I think the last question that I have for you before we head to our little break is there a game that you would like to play, whether it's one that hasn't come out yet? I know we talked about Mina already, but is there another game that either hasn't come out that you'd like to play when it does, or one that it's like on your backlog that you've been just waiting to get at?
Yes, so one that I would like to try is Hogwarts Legacy.
Oh yes, yeah. Another sort of open. I guess it's sort of an open game-ish. I'm sure, but I haven't played it.
Yeah, I have not played it. I play in my house the soundtrack because it's so peaceful. And I know J.K. Rowling sucks as a human.
Yes.
So I don't know. It's kind of
it's complicated.
Yeah, she's a horrible person, but I've seen that the game itself has a lot of details. How the rooms are. Dialogue, so I was curious to try that one.
Yeah, it seems like, at least from the outside looking in, that the development team really put a lot of love and care into that game, and it is one of those things that is just far too bad that like the series creator is a transphobic monster.
Yeah.
And because I also like, maybe this is the case for you, but I grew up having such an attachment and love for that series, both. The same with you, sort of?
Yeah. I liked it a lot growing up, yeah.
Yeah, the books, the movies, like it. I love even some of the games actually. Like I played the first 3 games on the computer. Oh wow! First one on the computer, and the next 2. I did have the first 2 on computer, and I played the second and third one on GameCube. And I actually love those games because you're basically reliving the story of those movies and books. And you are living in sort of, it's a chance to step into that world, which, especially as a kid, was just so magical. So, yeah, I guess all I'm saying is that it really sucks when something like that, almost, it's not exactly taken away, but it's kind of got like a stink to it like that. So, yeah, if that makes any sense. But let me know what you think if you do dive into it.
Yeah, I haven't played it, but yeah, I'll let you know if I play it.
Awesome. Well, before we cut to break, is there any game from the last like 5 years or so that you haven't mentioned that you'd be so bummed if you didn't bring up?
From the last 5 years?
Yeah, like recent memory.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, we got it. Awesome. Well, Fernanda, thanks for catching us up a little bit about what your more recent gaming history has been like. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll get into all things Metal Slug X, so I'll see you on the other side.
Okay, sounds good. See you there.
All right. Welcome back to Call Me By Your Game. Connor McCabe still here, and we're back to discuss all things Metal Slug X with our guest, Fernanda Perez. Hey, Fernanda.
Hello.
All right. Well, like I told you as well, before we, dive into your personal history, I've got some context that I'd like to catch the listener up on. So, if you want to jump in at any point while I'm just blabbing on about this game, you've got the green light, okay?
Sounds good.
Okay. Well, without further ado, I'll do some table setting. Metal Slug X is an upgraded version of Metal Slug 2 and was released in 1999, originally, Metal Slug 2 was, for the Neo Geo MVS. The PlayStation 1 version was released in 2001, as Fernanda told us earlier. Metal Slug itself is a run-and-gun series of games developed by SNK and Nazca Corp. And was originally released for the Neo Geo arcade machines. Nazca wanted the series to be challenging, comical, and cool, and took inspiration from anime like Mobile Suit Gundam and Akira. Metal Slug 2, the game that this was a revamped port of, is a sequel to the original Metal Slug and was made after SNK purchased Nazca Corp. Many gameplay elements and graphics were reused from the first game, with plenty of originals too. It debuted at the Amusement Machine Operators Union show in early 1998. The game's villain, Morden, returns and rebuilt his army in no time. Heroes from the first game, the Peregrine Falcon Squad, are back and joined by members of the Sparrows, Theo Jeremy, and I think it's Ari Kasamoto is how you pronounce that. I couldn't remember if it was Ari or Ari. I remember going through that when I was typing the show notes. But I guess it doesn't really matter. Either way. In this game, there was improved enemy variety, level types, vehicles, and weapons, and the game also added character transformations. Despite its many improvements, the game had the worst slowdown from any title on the Neo Geo, which was caused by a locked frame rate of 30 frames per second, leading to the fixed version that we know today as Metal Slug X. That game also had additional changes and level makeovers, and it was followed by Metal Slug First Mission on the Neo Geo Pocket Color in 1999, and also by a more direct sequel, Metal Slug XX in 2009. Fernanda, before we jump into your personal history with it, are there any details you want to include about the game itself that we may have missed?
No, I think, that's the same stuff that I was looking into. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
There's nothing I want to add.
Also, for the video viewers on YouTube, right above your, I think that's your left shoulder, is a cool, just animating Metal Slug window right there, which is so cool.
That's Tarma shooting a heavy machine gun, maybe?
Ever heard of it? It's really great, and it's been awesome to have in the background of this whole episode. Well, let's get into your history. How did you come to discover this game in the first place?
Okay, so I came to the US at the end of 2002.
Gotcha.
So by the time this game came out, I was still in Ecuador. That's where I'm from. And in Ecuador, I don't know the game situation now, but when I was in middle school, just to give you a kind of perspective, a family could buy groceries for a week for like $25, as far as I remember. So if that's what you're spending on groceries, no one can afford video games, right? If a game's $10, that's half your groceries already.
Yeah.
So because of this, there was a huge open pirate market of video games.
That's right. It's kind of coming back to me. I remember this.
Yes. You could go to the mall, like official store at the mall, where they will sell you a real PS1 that they had added a chip to read bootleg games.
Yes.
And you could have shelves upon shelves of video games for $1. PS1 games, $1. So, because my parents lived in the US, I always had extra money, extra change that I would get allowances and stuff. Because the games are $1, I would always go every weekend and check out, what's new, what I want to play. And so I walk into this store in the mall one day and I see this game so I learned later that this is the Japanese cover of the PS1 game, not the American cover. It shows 4 what looks like teenagers with like a metal window opening, and inside there's a little mouse eating like a sausage. So there's a mouse and 4 people looking at it like, whoa, a mouse. I thought it was some sort of cute mouse game. Cute raise your own pet game. I was like 13 at this time, so I'm just a little 13-year-old girl who wants to play a cute game, so I buy this game. So then I go to my house and put it in my PS1, and when it first starts, there you can choose a character. There's 4 people you can choose from. As far as I remember, this is the first game where there are girls I can pick.
Yeah.
So maybe there are others. Maybe there were. I just haven't played them.
You mean like in general it was the first game, or like in the Metal Slug series?
In general. In general.
Yeah, probably more rare back then.
Yeah, I think I'm sure there were. Just for me, that was the first time.
Yeah.
I had played as Donald Duck and like as Crash, but I've never played like as a girl.
Yeah, the titular male figures of our time, Donald Duck and Crash Bandicoot.
Yes. So not only that, one of the girls has glasses.
Okay.
As someone who has glasses, I was like, what? This is real? Glasses representation in
That's
the media?
representation, yes.
This is very rare. So anyway, I play it. And it's not a raise your own mouse game at all. It's kind of like I found this name is called Gun and Run or Run and Gun. Gun and Run.
Yeah, totally.
Like a platformer where you're just shooting at baddies, shooting. Basically, it's a shooting platformer game, kind of like Contra. It reminded me of Contra, just prettier and newer.
Totally.
And I liked it a lot. And I'm just shooting soldiers.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, cool. That's great to learn about, how it just sort of like, the back door, what you thought was going to be something cute and, I don't know, like a cozy game, one might describe it, ended up being a run and gun shoot 'em up.
Yeah.
But that's...
May I share the cover for or you can add it later?
Yeah, sure.
The Japanese cover?
Yes, definitely. Oh, I see what you're trying to do. I will put it on the screen
yes,
later.
That would be cool.
But if you want to share it with me, you can definitely share it.
Okay. So people can see
and maybe
it.
I'll even use the Japanese cover for the graphic that I make for the episode.
Yeah, so these look like 4 teenagers and a little mouse, and I thought it's a lab where I'm growing a mouse. I don't know.
Incredible. That's so no wonder you thought that. It looks like they're looking in on like where a mouse lives, and this is probably inside of like a machine that they've destroyed actually.
You're right. You're right. That makes sense.
Like an enemy weapon or whatever it is.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That is so funny. Oh my goodness. Okay, cool. We're definitely using that cover for the graphics that I make, I promise.
Thank you.
Well, that's great. When you played this game, was this something that you played by yourself, or did you play it with other people?
I played by myself at first.
Okay.
And then I always lived with cousins or was with cousins, all boys. I was the only girl cousin at that time. So I would be like, cousins, come play. So in this game, you can have 2 players.
Okay, cool.
And I remember it would be usually 3 cousins, and we have 2 controllers. And you die in this game a lot. So whenever someone would die, you pass on the controller to the 3rd person.
Oh, okay.
And, whoever dies of those 2 passes the controller to the empty hand.
Yes.
So if you're really good, you can stay playing the whole time. But we usually died and passed it like this.
Seems like a fair system.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. Okay, cool. So you kind of got a bit of both. Like you played by yourself and then with your cousins as well.
Yes.
Okay, sweet. Now when you were like... Once you realized it wasn't the game you thought it was and you were in the, run and gun nature of it, what like brought you back to the game, or what was exciting to you about playing it? I know you mentioned the female character with the glasses that you liked, but was there anything else?
Once you play it, it's just I think it's easy. It's easy enough to like anyone could play it, but it's also challenging enough to like keep you engaged.
Sure.
I read that's one of the ways they design arcade games, because you don't want, you want the money from people putting in the coins, so you want it to not be too easy or too hard so people can come back. So yeah, that definitely hooked me. And then the animations themselves, when you said that it was partly comedy, I was like, oh, I see, that makes sense. In every mission, there are like 6 missions. In every mission, as you are shooting the soldiers, there's guys tied up on sticks or hanging from places. When I play this in Ecuador, I thought these were like homeless men, and I'm just rescuing the homeless men.
Well, they kind of look like that. I know exactly what characters you're talking about.
Yeah, those guys with beards. So now, playing it as an adult, these are prisoners of war.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure. Not houseless people that you're rescuing, and they're like thanking you. That there's a lot of little visually it's very engaging. Like you're just shooting, and I was watching it again so that my memory is updated. I saw there's a baby just playing in a town at one point. You know, things like this. Just visually engaging. You don't really engage with, they're not playable things, but they're there in the world.
Yeah, they've got plenty of things that are just like to, I guess, fill out the environment, or those like prisoners of war, which have their own, you know, like really cool sprite, but they're also something that's on your end screen at the end of a level, that sort of thing. Yeah, you talking about the look of the game and the art, it's probably for me as an outsider the most striking thing. I think it's such a beautifully designed pixel art game.
Yes.
That I like. Yes. Like it's one of the things that definitely first caught my eye, and B, the action seems so fun and, like you said, inviting for a new player that had me very excited about it. But the art is really what I wanted to sort of just like harp on again.
Yeah, the art is beautiful, especially now seeing how pixel art is made and how it's so hard, and you know, every single vehicle has a lot of detail. The backgrounds have a lot of detail. In one of the missions, there's this bridge that's like undulating like this.
Oh my goodness.
In Siberia. And I love that bridge because it just looks cool.
Yeah. Yeah, man. We stand a good bridge, don't we?
Yes.
It is, even as we're talking about it too, with the visuals, we're talking about the art too, but the animation is so good. Even if it's just like a few different frames that you have for whether it's like a character moving or getting hit or falling over, or like a vehicle and all that it does, it's really spectacular, and I can see why it would be so appealing to especially a young kid at the time.
Yeah, there's a lot of detail. Like I said, one thing I noticed was if you always have a gun, and I noticed when let's say a soldier is really close to you, like, you know, face to face, there's no different button that you're pressing. You're still pressing the gun button.
Yes.
But instead of the gun, because you're so close, the animation switches to a knife and you stab him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and there's nothing you do as a player. You're just shooting your gun, but I guess the game knows I'm so close I could stab this enemy.
Yes, that's just like they changed the attack because of the proximity.
Yes.
Sort of. Okay. Wow, that's interesting. Looking back at the level, I know you mentioned the bridge, and maybe this is your answer, but do you have memorable like levels or moments in the game?
Yeah, lots. So obviously rescuing these prisoners of war that are just hanging. Let's see. So as you go deeper into the game, you realize that you're not necessarily fighting only humans. You start to fight these weird aliens.
Yes.
And I think mission 5 or 6, one of the last ones, there's these weird zombie looking things that when you shoot them, they just burst, like the blood bursts. When I first saw that as a kid, it really scared me. Like I hated those guys. I hated them. That was interesting to see. And I thought, what is even going on? I was fighting soldiers, and now I'm fighting jellyfish and weird zombie things.
Yeah.
It turns out later you learn, and I didn't, when I played it, I didn't know this is a sequel of the first Metal Slug. It turns out that the main enemy of the first game has now joined forces with aliens.
Yes.
And so in the end, you are fighting those aliens.
That's right. I was, in doing my research, I almost, I could do like, most of the time I'm doing like the bare minimum to prepare for an episode, not to say that I don't prepare for these, but I get what I need to know so that I can just hear from my guest. But because this is a series that's so foreign, and honestly because this is an upgraded port of Metal Slug 2, I felt like that there was more I needed to know. So I watched this, in fact, a video I'm going to cite in the episode notes. I'll send it to you. It's a history of Metal Slug video by a channel called I Am 16-Bit. It is so amazing, and they get to that at the end of the Metal Slug X part, or maybe it's Metal Slug 2, I don't remember, but what a good twist, and it also explains why Morden is able to build back his army so fast. Is I don't know if the aliens like clone his soldiers or create these guys, but yeah, that twist of the aliens working with him was great.
Yes, and I watched a replay today just to know, like, I remember everything.
Mm-hmm.
In the first mission, there's a point where you shoot, I don't know, a house or a shed or something. These weird jellyfish come out and just burst. So they're not attacking you. They just come out of the explosion and burst in the air. And I was like, oh, that was a hint that something more than, supernatural or sci-fi is going on.
Yeah, a little foreshadowing for that twist to come.
Yes.
It's funny. I've never even played the game, but watching it and having the final level, seeing, Morden sort of get, I think he gets brought up by the aliens and you have to shoot down the mothership or whatever.
Yeah.
Very Independence Day.
Yes.
It's a very Independence Day moment.
Yes.
Even
I
with
know
that,
what you were talking about.
Yes, that little airplane.
Yeah.
I was like, oh man, I want like more to fight of more of the aliens now. It feels like there was like a little, like some left on the table, and maybe they get into that in sequels. I've never played them.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. You were talking about those being some of your favorite moments. Was there any other like detail you wanted to mention, whether it's like a weapon or a moment in the game or something?
Yes, so a lot of the times whether you open a treasure chest or the war prisoners gift you, there's a lot of weapons. Mm-hmm. So, which is fun. There's like the popular heavy machine gun, and there's a laser, there's like a missile gun. There's a lot of guns. It's really interesting. When I played this game, I didn't speak English. Mm-hmm. So when they say heavy machine gun or laser gun or whatever they say,
the announcer voice is so good.
Yeah, thank you. So I just hear like, I don't understand what they're saying. So all I remember, the little weapons, the weapon has a letter on it that you touch. So, heavy machine gun's an H. Laser beam is an L. So I would just be like, I like the H.
Yes.
Or that's how I would remember.
Totally. That's a specific detail too from your time that not everyone probably experienced too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love hearing that though. And yeah, even just you, like, first of all, great impression, like I said, of the announcer, but the announcer is like so into it. And it's such a funny thing for a game like that. I'm sure in the world of the game they're not hearing this, but it's just for the player. But I love the like gumption of which the announcer like yells all these details out.
Yeah. So at the end of every mission, that same announcer goes, "Mission complete," and you hear like like the music. I am very bad at doing things I have to do, like cleaning the house or whatever, chores.
Yes.
And I try to find any way I can trick myself into doing anything. And I was like, what if every time I do a chore, I can play this sound? I tried it for a bit. I tried playing Mission Complete when I finished a chore. I think it worked for a little bit, but then it wasn't exciting anymore. Yeah,
it lost its luster. But I love, it's almost like trying to trick yourself into a delayed Pavlovian response almost.
Yes.
That's so funny to me. Well, we've gotten to hear a lot of great detail about the game itself, and I'm sure we'll get into a little more as we go, but I want to get into some more of the context that you've already started to share from your life. I want to start with doing some scene painting of where you would have played this game, like the room and where your PlayStation was set up. Can you take me through that exercise?
Yes. So I grew up with my grandparents. So this was my grandparents' house in Ecuador. There was the biggest room in the house, which first was used as a guest room for parties or, meetings. Mm-hmm. Eventually was used for a 3 cousins' brother's bedroom.
Yes.
And they moved out, and then it became my bedroom. So I had this the biggest room in the house was my bedroom.
Okay.
There was space for 2. I don't know why my grandpa was like, put 2 beds in there in case Fernanda has a sleepover. So my bedroom had 2 beds. It was one of the, back then, that house doesn't exist anymore, but back then it was one of the colonial houses. Mm-hmm. So the ceilings were really high. Mm. This sounds extremely fancy, but the house was falling apart. So the wall had chunks missing.
Oh my gosh.
This. And you've been to Mexico, right?
Yes.
I don't know if in Mexico you saw this, if it's the same, but a lot of restaurants will use plastic stools
I can't
where you
remember.
sit, like stools made of plastic.
Sure.
So I had a stool made of plastic. That is where my PlayStation 1 sat.
Okay.
On this stool made of plastic. And I sat on my bed and I played it on my dad's old Toshiba TV.
Amazing. Okay, cool. That gives me a really good idea. Were there windows in this room?
Yes, huge French windows.
Oh,
So like I
really?
said, tall ceilings, huge French windows that the top ones I couldn't even reach to clean. I'm saying it sounds fancy, but things were literally falling apart.
Yes. Maybe a crack in the glass on those French windows.
Yes, one was maybe missing, things like this.
Okay, that's great. So that I love to like get into the feeling and the place of where you experienced this. When you think back to playing this game, do you have any memories, broad or specific, whether it be by yourself or with other people when you played?
Yeah, I have a couple memories. Whenever the game would get hard, so he's Ecuadorian, but his parents named him Franklin. So my cousin, I would ask my cousin, we say in Spanish, Franklin, like, come help me. And he would help me in the hard parts.
Okay, cool.
At that time, he was in college, so older than me. He could do the hard parts very easily. Then another memory I have is when I lived in Japan. There are game arcades called, one of the brands is Taito, so they're called Taito Station. In the Taito Station in the city where I live, they have the Metal Slug X arcade at the basement floor.
Okay.
So playing there, and I would get killed like instantly. They really wanted my money.
Especially the arcade versions.
Yes, very hard, and you don't get credits. It's just per coin. But I remember I played it a couple times and I was like, whatever. And then this guy came, a Japanese guy, and he played so well. And I was just watching him, flawless.
Uh-huh.
And when he finished the mission, I said in Japanese, like, wow, you're so good. And he was so bashful. Like, he's never heard such a compliment in his life. And he bowed to me and I bowed to him. And that was it.
That's such a sweet moment. Can you remind me what years you lived in Japan?
Different years, 2008 and then 2010 to 2012 and then 2014 to 2017.
Okay. Oh, wow. I don't think if you had told me I'd forgotten it, but you had several stints. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Were you a tutor there? Or am I just thinking of something else?
Kind of, yeah. I was.
Okay.
So at first I did a thing called the JET program. People who like Japan know about this. It's a program through the Japanese government. You go somewhere and help public school. So through the Board of Education, you're like an assistant teacher.
Okay.
And in my second stint, I was a kindergarten teacher.
Okay. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. That sounds in the ballpark.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. I love that so much. Well, Fernanda, I guess I'd like to just go back to just a little bit to that, maybe to the time when you were in Ecuador playing the game. Do you remember like what other sorts of things you would have been doing as a kid at that time? I think you said you were 13 or 12.
Yeah.
What were you been doing, or any other like just memories from your life that you have back then?
Yeah, so 13 is what grade?
I guess
So
7th for me,
yeah.
but I wonder what it was like there.
Probably it's the same, but I was 1 year ahead of everyone.
Okay, smarty pants.
Not because I was smart, because my parents left as I started school. So my grandparents were like, she's sad, put her in school.
Oh, I
Like,
see.
maybe
She needs something to do.
Yeah, basically. That's what I heard. I don't know. So probably I was in 8th grade in an all-girls school. And I remember none of my classmates, they were all girls. No one really, not many people had consoles to begin with. And then most of the girls weren't that into games. There were some that were. So I would be going to school. My school, I was so lucky because my school, 7th to 9th grade, was in the afternoon. But they just planned it out that way. So if you were in any of these grades, you didn't have to wake up early. I would wake up, late, 8, 9, do my homework, go to school in the afternoon, talk with my friends. I've asked many Americans from what I've heard, hate middle school and high school. That, like, a lot of them, it's like their worst time of their life.
Yeah.
If you ask most people from Latin America, it is the best time of their life.
Whoa.
Like, all of us think of those times as like the springtime of our lifetime. Everyone wants to go back to those times.
And that's the power of waking up late, of getting to sleep in.
But anyone, even the other schools that, my school was a little weird, but even the other schools that go in the morning, there's a lot of, the best way I can compare it is like if you hear British bands of like the 70s, there's a lot of anger towards teachers and how, everyone's cruel and things like this. I think it was similar in Ecuador, but having that common enemy means all the kids have a lot of camaraderie.
Okay, it's bonding in a way.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm wondering, even just hearing you talk about British bands like that, I'm like, did the Smiths have songs about being angry at teachers? Probably.
I don't know. Maybe.
It's hard to say. Well, I don't need to go down that road right now. Those are some amazing details from your life. Thank you for sharing those. Before we wrap up your thoughts, first I'd like to just give you a chance. If there's anything about this game that you haven't shared yet, whether it's a detail, something you remember, or even the time, is there anything you haven't gotten to share?
Well, one more thing I'd like to add is that it seems to me that the enemies are basically Nazis.
Yeah.
They have, the leaders of the soldiers have like these red bands on their arms with just an X. It's like a simple, an X.
I did notice that, yeah.
So I think they're supposed to be Nazis. I think, you're part of the Allies probably fighting them. I thought that was very interesting thing. Like, they're kind of taking from history, but making it their own sci-fi story.
Yeah, definitely. I wonder, with the unfortunate just boom of fascism in our day.
Yeah.
And not just fascism, but people embracing and I guess Nazism again. It's so funny how throughout so much of our lives leading up, I mean, even before you and I came into this world, how the Nazis were just such a great placeholder for any sort of like villain in, movies, games, books, you name it. Yeah. And even if it almost sometimes could be like the lazy choice of, I don't know, the bad guys are Nazis, but but in this day and age, I don't know, like I don't really get tired of it. Like, I just played through the new Indiana Jones game, and of course you're fighting, like, literally the enemies are named fascists, whether you're fighting, it's mostly like I think Mussolini's Italian army, but it could go the same obviously for Nazi Germany, but yeah, it almost doesn't get old, and it's unfortunately still relevant today.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. But good detail to note there. I guess I do have one more question. I was dishonest. Do you have have you revisited this game? I know you watched it today, but maybe since then you played a little in the arcade in Japan. But when was the last time you played it?
Probably a year or two ago was maybe the last time. I always think of that game fondly, and I think, I played it recently, not too recently. Not too long ago also, but I know that whenever I want to play a game and I don't know what game to play, it's a very easy game to just start.
Okay, cool. I love that. Well, to wrap things up on our discussion on Metal Slug X for you, can you do me a favor and just put a bow on whatever place it holds in your life?
A place it holds in my life. I would say it's a very nostalgic game for me. And also kind of interesting to culturally to see at 13 years old, I was playing a Japanese game. Apparently it was very huge in Japan. Not knowing that I would go there later.
Yes. Yeah. Super interesting. Well, Fernanda, thank you so much for bringing on Metal Slug X, a game we've never gotten to discuss on the podcast. It was so much fun hearing from you.
Thank you. Thank you as well, Connor, for having me. Lots of fun. And I hope you play it and let me know if you like it.
I sure will. We're doing as a little preview. Well, when this episode comes out, well, first of all year long, we're doing a celebration of the PlayStation 1 because it turns 30 in the at least this region, NTSC. It's 30 years old, released in 1995 here. So we're doing a bunch of stuff throughout the year, but this Friday we're doing a PlayStation 1 console draft where we get in like a desert island scenario. We're in space, and we always bring one console's like all the games from it, and we inevitably always get hit by an asteroid. So then before we shoot off in our escape pods, we all pick 5 games and go in like an order. Because of my research on this game, I don't know if I'm going to end up with it, but it's on my list because it looks awesome and it looks like a fun game to master.
Yeah. You should play it. Let me know.
I will. For listeners who might want to hear that, this episode came out 2 days before this one on Video Games, a Comedy Show. So if you're hearing this, go back and listen to that other feed, or if you're on the Patreon, you get it in your own feed.
I see.
Yes.
We're in the future.
Yeah, we're in the future. For when we're recording this, we're doing it in 2 days, but it released anyway.
Gotcha.
Before we go, though, I do have a couple of fun post-show segments. The first of which is the Fact Me by Your Game segment, where I'm just going to share one fun fact with you about the game today.
Okay, cool.
So in doing a little research, this information will come from the same video that I already referenced. It's called Metal Slug Retrospective by IM16bit. If you'd like to watch that video, I've got a link to it at the very bottom of the show notes in the citations section. But I have this titled IREM to Nazca Lineage. And this is just kind of getting into how the Metal Slug series came to be. So before they were known as Nazca, the development team was called, of Metal Slug X and the Metal Slug series, was called IREM. That's IREM. In 1994, this company, best known for arcade classics such as Kung Fu Master and Space Shoot 'em Up, R-Type, was going through major restructuring. They ceased game development at the end of the year, and developers began breaking off into groups in the hopes of working with companies such as Sega and Capcom. One of these groups had their sights set on working with SNK. This SNK was a fan of their previous work and hired them on under the new name Nazca Corporation. The company consisted of only 18 people, many of which were credited by their nicknames at the end of video games.
That's right. Yeah.
Have you seen that in games? Especially old ones?
Yeah, the credits at the end, and I'm like, are these guys trolls, or did the company not let them put their name? Like, I don't know what's going on.
It was, from what I remember, that was kind of common back then. I think it was like some weird mentality from, I want to say a lot of like, maybe weird's not a fair way to put it, a different mentality from Japanese developers of like something along the lines of like not highlighting one person too much or individual, so they would put their nicknames, which I don't know. I think it's different.
Yeah. If that is the cause, that sounds like culturally correct. Yes.
Okay, gotcha. So maybe that is exactly what was going on here. But eventually, a few of them, did reveal that they were some developers on the game.
Interesting. So you couldn't even reveal that?
I guess not, or they just chose not to, agreed not to. So this crew, before they ended up making the Metal Slug series, once they worked with SNK, they worked on Neo Geo's ports to the Sega Saturn and the PlayStation, and then finally they were allowed to develop games for the Neo Geo MVS on the side, including their first title called Neo Turf Masters, another golf game. This all coming before the Metal Slug series. So kind of just a lot of information, but being that it was a company I never heard of, I kind of wanted to go down that road.
Yeah. That's cool that the previous games had nothing to do with like shooting or war or wars.
Several golf games, Kung Fu Master. Anyway, that'll do for the Fact Me by Your Game segment, and I'll lead us into the last one for the show, the game recommendations. And Fernanda, it's been a while, but just to refresh you, this segment is my one forced tie-in to the movie Call Me by Your Name, where I'm going to treat Metal Slug X as your passionate summer fling that you met in Italy, but unfortunately, things are not going to work out. And so, in order to help you get over the heartbreak, I've got 3 potential new flings for you, if you don't mind me.
Okay.
Oh no, she's going through it now. So these all have at least a little something in common with Metal Slug X. Are you ready to get back out there?
Yes.
Okay. The first of the 3 is if you want an obvious, modern shoot 'em up with a different style of gorgeous graphics, I'll recommend a game that a lot of people know called Cuphead. Are you familiar?
Yes, I'm familiar.
Have you given this a shot before?
Yes, and it wasn't really for me, but I forget why.
I mean, it is brutally difficult and takes a lot of patience. I finally dove into it about 4 years ago, and I loved it, but I did not come close to finishing it.
Yeah.
But that's one that has, basically the same style of game. If what you liked about it, being that you can play as 4 different characters, that it was multiplayer, you like team-based shooters, and you liked fighting aliens in Metal Slug X, I'll recommend a game. There's a new title last year called Helldivers 2. Are you familiar with this one?
No.
This is a game where have you seen the movie Starship Troopers?
Maybe a long time ago.
It's basically like a satirical military comedy, like a sci-fi comedy. And so Helldivers 2 was a game that came out last year. It's a team-based shooter where you're trying to take down, at first it's just aliens, different types of enemies show up, but there's chaos, there's comedy, and it was wildly popular last year. So that's your second recommendation.
Cool.
Helldivers 2. Now, the final one is if what you took away from this was what I took away from it. Seeing one of the main characters, he was handsome and had some gorgeous hair, and that's really the only thing you want from your main character. I'll recommend Resident Evil 4 because Leon S. Kennedy, the main character of that game, has a gorgeous middle part. Do you know who this character is?
I know. Yes, I know. And because I am a basically child of the 90s, I love that hairstyle and the middle part.
I started playing Stardew Valley for the first time, and that is a haircut option. And I was like, well, because I will never be able to wear hair like that, I'm going to wear it in game. So
you could if you wanted to.
Hey, that's very kind. So maybe it's just that I have a fixation on this middle part. Anyway, to wrap up your recommendations, we have Cuphead, Helldivers 2, and Resident Evil 4 just because of Leon's hair. That'll do it for the segment, and that'll actually bring us to the end of the episode. So before we go and plug whatever we'd like, thanks again for coming back, Fernanda. This was so fun to have you on. I really appreciate you making the time to be here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me and taking me down a memory lane.
You betcha. Is there anything that you want to plug? I know we plugged some stuff earlier. Do you want to maybe repeat those or just anything else?
Not really. Well, earlier I mentioned, if you want to watch improv, go to the UCB's Feliz Hour show. They are once a month. That's all. And if you like games, whenever the game Mina the Hollower comes out, I have heard through the grapevine it's inspired by Zelda and by Bloodborne.
Yes, some inside sources you might have.
Yeah, so if you like games, wait for that one as well.
I love it. Well, for that, I'll put a link to the next Felice Hour show. And then I'll just link to the Mina the Hollower webpage, because I'm sure Yacht Club has one. Well, that's great. If I don't see you before the Shovel Knight concert that we're going to in March, then I guess that's when I'll see you. But I'll go ahead and just close this out with some plugs of my own.
Sounds good.
The cover art for Call Me By Your Game is done by the artist Glenn J. Like all of the other plugs, you can find him and his other work on Instagram and a link in the show notes at Glenn with 2Ns.JAY. The show is produced, edited, and the original music that you hear throughout is done by Jeremy Schmidt. You can thank him for his hard work on this podcast by listening to his show, Video Games, a Comedy Show, wherever you get your shows. Have I said the word show enough? You can find me all over social media on Blue Sky and Instagram. On Blue Sky, I'm at Connor McCabe. And then I'm also on Twitch at twitch.tv/consiscool69, where you can watch me play all sorts of stuff. I'm currently playing through my whole playthrough of Control, which we're doing for the Games Club, bonus episodes on our Patreon, so you can follow me there for that. You can also follow the show all over social media. Come find us on Instagram and Blue Sky. As well, we also have a YouTube channel, so if you're an audio-only listener, even if you don't plan to watch the videos, do me a favor. We're pretty close to 100 subscribers there. Go to YouTube, give us a hit that subscribe button, and you might even like how cool all of us look on this podcast. You never imagined how we look. And, I mean, you got to see the Metal Slug animation, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So, listener, go check us out on YouTube. And then finally, if you're still listening, you've got to check us out on Patreon, over at patreon.com/supernpcradio. That's the place where my podcast network, Super NPC Radio, which of this podcast is a part of, has all of our bonus video game content. You get stuff, even if you're just at the free tier. I encourage you to subscribe if you're a longtime listener of the show. We'll give you an invite to the Discord so you can chat with some great people about video games. But there's bonus stuff at every tier that you go up. Our Games Club's at the $5 DJ Toad tier. My bonus episode, the co-op series where we're doing all those indies, is at the $10 Engineer Toad tier.
Cool.
Find one that works for you if you're interested. And if anything, just go to the free tier. You'll get this show in your feed every week. You don't even have to look for it. Again, patreon.com/supernpcradio. But that'll do it. For another episode of Call Me By Your Game, we will see you on the next one.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.